Hello and welcome to our online program at the REAIM Summit at The Hague at the Netherlands. My name is Redi Tlhabi. I'm delighted to be with you again. We've been building up to this moment for a couple of months now. The day has arrived, the 15th of February 2023, and we'll be together again tomorrow on the second day of the REAIM Summit. What is the REAIM Summit? Well, governments from all over the world, defense and military experts, analysts, academics, activists, innovators, they all gathered here at The Hague at the Netherlands to talk about a very important topic that is gaining international prominence, and that is the responsible use of artificial intelligence within the military domain. What is that? We'll find out. What is artificial intelligence? How is it being used in the military? How does it change the whole landscape and architecture? What do we as citizens need to know about it? And as with every single innovation, especially one that has to do with machinery, what are the dangers? What are the anxieties? What are researchers and academics saying? We'll ask all those questions in the next 2 days. You will see panel discussions, presentations, keynote addresses, and some exhibitions as well. And we hope that you will stay with us for the entire 2 days. We will in a few minutes go to the official opening, the plenary. I will tell you more about it in just a few minutes. But what we want to do is just to get an overview of what the day may look like. And we can't do that without delving into the topic. So I have 2 experts who are going to go on this journey with us. If your head is spinning, just relax. I've got 2 experts who are going to take us on this journey and explain such complexities and some of the important aspects that we need to know about. So let me introduce you. It's a pleasure to introduce Kerstin Vignard, who is an international security professional with expertise in AI, autonomous technologies, cyber, and human enhancement. And I also want to tell you a little bit more about the organization from which she comes. Senior Analyst, National Security Analysis Department at the Johns Hopkins University. So nice to have you with us. Thank you. And we also have Dr. Michael Raska. You have an academic background, of course, and your research interests focus on policy-oriented aspects of military innovation, force modernization, and cyber warfare. But again, for our audience, just a little bit of an idea about the organization from which he comes, assistant professor and coordinator of the Military Transformations Program at the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies, that is a university in Singapore. Am I correct? Okay, let's start with you, Kerstin. Very complicated and technical topics and themes. Why are we here? What's artificial intelligence in the military domain all about?
Well, there are so many applications of AI in the military domain, some of which are very similar to ways we want to leverage AI in the public sector and in the private sector. But there are unique attributes in the military domain, there are unique norms, there are unique needs. I think Michael can talk more about the depths of the different applications. But what we need to focus on in the next 2 days is this idea of responsible innovation, responsible AI. What does it mean to leverage AI in our societies, in our militaries, which are part of our societies, in ways that are lawful, ethical, that respect societal norms, and protect our human values? Mm-hmm.
She mentioned societal norms, and I imagine somebody watching us at home is thinking, what are they talking about? Machines are going to take over, they're going to be wars, and human beings just become, or human systems just become obsolete. Is that it?
Well, this is the big question is really where, when we look at the progress, the technological progress over the last 20, 30 years or so, we had all these new technologies and debate and discussions about the impact of new technologies. And a lot of the discussions were focusing that IT revolution of military affairs will be basically changing the character of warfare, right? So, but much of the discussion of the past 30 years was about new technologies sort of augmenting existing conventional weapon systems. Mm-hmm. So, for example, tanks, missiles, fighter jets, these technologies, the new emerging technologies, the IT, the discussion of the past 30 years was about how these technologies can enhance the military effectiveness of these technologies. But now with AI, when we have this sort of what I call the AI wave, or sort of the convergence of whole gamut of technologies of fourth industrial revolution, think about big data analytics, AI, cyber, quantum computing, new materials, the entire convergence of these technologies, not only just AI. The question is whether they will be able to actually replace all these conventional military technologies and sort of provide a sort of a next revolution in military affairs, what I call the AI wave. And that comes with a lot of questions and debates. On one hand, you have a lot of opportunities. So all the militaries in the world are thinking about how can we use this, how can we innovate, how can we gain the military edge over potential rival, right? But at the same time, there are lots of risks as with any new technology. So how can you use it in a way that is not unrestricted, right? So this whole debate that Kerstin mentioned about responsible innovation, responsible use of AI, right? You have to provide some parameters on how these technologies can be developed, used, employed, and what are the potential repercussions if they are not. And so this summit, in my view, is about that. It's about getting different people from different backgrounds, academics, government policy and tech experts together to discuss these opportunities and challenges, what I call the AI wave.
That's very interesting when you talk about the plurality of voices that we're going to hear. Kerstin, are the right people leading this journey? We are here at the invitation of the government of the Netherlands and, of course, co-hosting with the Republic of South Korea. Should government be at the forefront?
Well, they have to be at the forefront because governments are the ones that control the military institutions, right?
The state does.
The state, exactly. And yet, citizens have a voice in that. Citizens should be concerned about the governance of our institutions. So they have to be at the lead because they ultimately make decisions. That said, we need technologists, we need scientists, we need academics, we need ethicists, we need advocates, we need a plurality of voices. And places, our existing institutions, such as the United Nations, I spent 25 years at the United Nations. It's an amazing institution, it's very relevant and very necessary. When it comes to technological issues, it is the United Nations ultimately. You can have multi-stakeholder meetings, you can bring people to the table, but states are in charge there. And opportunities like this, having a summit that is multi-stakeholder, and I have to say the Dutch government is very, very good at convening multi-stakeholder convenings, meetings, environments, long-term initiatives. They are very good at that. They recognize that plurality of voices, that we have different tasks before us. And this summit being the first one is very important because it allows us to all bring our perspectives, our concerns, our talents to the table and start saying, we're going to group these issues over here. And these are issues that technologists are really going to have to grapple with. And we're going to put these issues over here and we're going to convene another meeting around those. But first we have to come together and really put it all on the table. And then we can start dividing it in a systematic way, because if the idea is that we're all just going to come together, a big tent is important, but there's a point where there's horses for courses, right? And to get the work done, specialists and different constellations of actors are going to have to go away and do something. And then we'll reconvene, hopefully in a year's time, and we'll be in a different place.
I'm glad you said that because, we had a build-up to this particular summit. We started at the UN General Assembly in New York in 2022, where we launched and just kind of getting into the nitty-gritties of it. And then there was a build-up at a military base here at the Netherlands, and all those topics around the ethics, the legal aspects, the technical aspects, all of that very, very important. And we are going to unpack it all for you in the next 2 days. But Michael, let me come back to you. What are some of the issues that you think this summit should not conclude without addressing?
Well, there's never a definite conclusion, but I think the key fundamental issue is this. the technologies, whether AI or others, are evolving at much faster pace than the government's ability to actually regulate them, right? And even though the states and governments should be at the forefront of this, the reality is that they are responding to innovations that is happening outside of the government or military spectrum, because most of the innovations right now are happening in a commercial private arena. And most militaries are trying to exploit the innovations from the commercial private sector into the military. So again, it's this reverse order where previously militaries were at the forefront of innovation, of technological innovation. So think about the internet was developed for military by military, right, in the 1960s. Now, most of the AI innovations is happening at the private sector, and militaries and governments are trying to figure out, well, how do we exploit the potential? How do we absorb this, right? So on one hand, you have that aspect. And the second aspect is, even though the governments should be at the forefront of this, they are, in reality, they are not, right? And they cannot do it alone because of all the security challenges that governments face right now, right? Think about from the conventional warfare threats, nuclear, low asymmetric, low intensity conflict, terrorism. So every government, right, is basically facing this convergence of security challenges. They cannot do it alone. So many of them have no choice but to rely on technology. So here comes the opportunity where the technology can help you to sort out a lot of the data, a lot of the issues, and provide you opportunity to do the intelligence analysis, do the gathering of the data, you know, sorting out. So there's a lot of opportunities. But again, the governments and militaries are sort of trailing behind.
They're followers?
Yeah, they're followers from big tech companies like Google, Facebook, Meta, and others who have the ability to gather and control the big data and have the people, the talent, right, to develop the algorithms or sort it out. So this summit, again, is about getting the conversation going, again, trying to mitigate this gap between the regulatory aspects of the use of responsible use and development of this technology vis-a-vis the technological progress that is constantly evolving. Mm-hmm. So by the time we have the summit next year, 2 years ahead, right, the technologies will be even progressing at a much faster rate. And so the reality, in my view, is that really the governments are really trailing behind, and they are trying to understand really what that means. And if you have gathering like the summit, the REAIM, where you have these technologies, the ethicists, the military experts, right? So if you have 100 smart people bringing together, if you have 1,000, right, to solve a problem, I think the potential for solving it is much higher than if you are, sitting in a government bubble and trying to solve it alone.
And Michael is talking about a government bubble, but there's also this international scale of this issue, isn't
Absolutely.
it? Because we don't live in silos. The war in Ukraine is showing us all of that. There is an intersectionality, interconnectedness. And so also creating that kind of equality and moving together at a diplomatic and international level. Your thoughts there?
Absolutely. I mean, this is really critical. We have different societal approaches to technology, to AI, to our military systems, to our governance. Having all these voices present at the table is incredibly important. I think it's exciting that the Republic of Korea is a co-host. I think it gives us an opportunity to bring in a completely different dimension and different perspectives. So we are very fortunate to see that partnership come together. Can I just follow up on something that Michael said? I think it's really important that we keep in mind from the get-go that we're not talking just about AI-enabled weapon systems. When we talk about responsible AI in the military, we are talking about the application of AI throughout the military enterprise. In some ways, that's very similar to, for example, logistics or human resources. The private sector is incorporating AI. We have things maybe we could learn, good practice from them. It's quite similar, perhaps, to how the military handles their human resources or supply chain issues. But there are very unique things about the military as well, but not just weapons. Decision support tools is one that is not a weapon system. It might be weapon adjacent, but could be AI enabled. And we need to think really hard about what responsible AI means for those systems.
I think that is so important, Michael. I'm sitting here thinking about, of course, Ukraine, but also we've just had this very tragic event, Turkey and Syria, earthquake, people being found under that rubble after so many days, babies surviving under the most adverse conditions. And I'm just thinking that the systems that can be employed by the military to identify people who are in need, to send aid to those who are in need, there's also that aspect too, isn't it?
Of course, the applications are, ubiquitous, right? So whether, again, it's logistics, whether it's gathering and processing of all the data. But again, the problem is also we cannot overly rely on these technologies on their own. So what the war in Ukraine shows, for example, that even though you have potential of advanced military technologies, the actual warfare is a trench warfare that combines elements of a 21st century technology. So what I basically argue is that Nintendo armies that rely only on technologies really do not matter in today's modern warfare. You still need very capable militaries that have to do the fighting. And going back to the conversation before, why we also have this summit, is also important to understand that different countries have different ideas on what the governance and responsible innovation actually means, right? So we are in a strategic competition for understanding the parameters of these technologies, and every country will have a different interest and different ideas of what that really actually means, right? So even though it seems like that there's an overwhelming consensus, or we need to talk about the problem, the reality is that every country in the world who are developing these technologies, right, have a different ideas of how it should be done, right? And here you can distinguish great powers from small states like Netherlands, Singapore, or other small states, right? Because they are in the midst of this technological competition whirlpool by strategic great powers. And they need to try to figure out a way, how do we shape the direction and character of this innovation? So how do we do this? And the only way is to shape the conversation about norms, about responsible use, multilateral setting. So there's this big divergence between different countries having different ideas on how this should be done.
You read my mind there, and I think, Kerstin, I'll leave you out of this one for just a second and just go to Michael, because he's just started throwing the cat amongst the pigeons there. The interstate competition is very important. We're talking realism here in a way, because states do compete with each other, right? And that perceptions of safety and security and defending your citizens only exist when you are talking with your friends, but there are states that are competing with each other. Are you advising that the kind of domain can be harmful if states don't go ahead of the game?
I'm saying that these technologies will create new alliances, tech alliances. So you will have different countries that share similar values and visions about these technologies bundled together into tech alliance. And there will be other tech alliance, that will have different ideas on how these technologies are being used or developed, right? So we are at this crossroad in the international relations, where the globalization, as we know it, is basically over. The strategic competition between U.S. and China, to a lesser degree also Russia, and other emerging powers such as India coming, having a voice in this, is sort of fragmenting the international consensus or the multilateral approaches to this. But that doesn't mean that that there cannot be areas of convergence. Of course, right? There can be areas of convergence, and it has to be in some areas, right? But the AI wave, as I call it, creates or accelerates the strategic competition for emerging technologies, because innovation and technology is now a source of power. And that is the fundamental one point that everybody sort of agrees on. So who has the potential to innovate has greater potential for military, political, and economic power.
And again, at the diplomatic level, the challenges of creating a regulatory environment, a regulatory framework, when you're dealing with states with different capacities, different interests, it really must be a mammoth task. And I'm thinking again about a multilateral organization such as the United Nations. It would have to also be in the forefront.
I would say yes and no. I'm not sure that we're in a place right now where we can really talk about having a global agreement, for example. You know, our international security agreements are usually consensus-based, right? We negotiate consensus, and when consensus is a valuable thing. It means that what's on the table, what everyone agrees to, is solid. However, it means that everyone's agreed to it, which means that it's kind of the lowest common denominator that we could all agree on. This is the moment right now where we should be setting our sights high. We should be aiming for strong, good practice, sharing of good practice, getting down into the nitty-gritty of what does it mean to operationalize these ethical principles that we all kind of intuitively, we know, we feel, you know, it's important that AI is governable. But what does that mean? And how do we measure it? And how do we, know, how do we trust that that is actually being governed in a responsible way? Right? So this is not the moment to negotiate that. It's the moment to say, hey, in my domain, in my field, in my governance, this is what we're doing. What are you doing? What can you share about what you're doing? What can I learn from you? What can you learn from me? Let's see if we can be stronger together and then help pull others up to that level.
I really like that, relationships of trust and collaboration. I'm sure we'll expand on that in just a moment. But right now, we are getting into the open plenary where we are going to hear the Foreign Minister, Wopke Hoekstra, who will open the summit. He's expected to lay out the agenda for the next 2 days. But not only that, but take this topic that we've been discussing and really put it high up on the international agenda. And today is not just about speeches and presentations. There's also some creativity that is happening here at the REAIM Summit in the Netherlands. What am I talking about? Well, the delegates will be presented with a dilemma, and it will be presented to the high-level delegates in the military, in the technical and operational, legal sectors. And this dilemma is connected to the responsible application of AR in the military domain, and it will discuss reliability. I call it the RET, reliability, explainability, and transparency. All of that we will discuss, and then also take an analysis of the opening summit in just a few minutes. But let's just go now to the main room, the plenary, the opening, and hear what the Foreign Minister of the Netherlands has to say.